Wickets tumble in eventful day one at Chelmsford. In the final round of the Bob Willis Trophy, Essex knew they would top the South Group with a win over Middlesex, who themselves could still catch the reigning county championship title holders should other results go their way. Hosts Essex remain unbeaten and currently lead the group on 70 points, 7 ahead of Kent. Despite losing the toss, it didn't take Essex long to strike in Chelmsford. Just 2 overs into the day, Middlesex opener Max Holden nibbled at Sam Cook's delivery to fall for a second ball duck. 2 balls later and Cook thought he tracked Nick Gubbins, but despite a big appeal, the umpire disagreed. But Gubbins wouldn't survive Jamie Porter's delivery, pinned on the front pads to leave Middlesex in early trouble, now 5 for 2. And before the half-hour mark, Essex had their first point in the bag with a 3rd wicket. An off-cutter from Porter outfoxing Sam Robson to clip middle and off stump to leave the visitors 18 for 3. Middlesex's decision to bat was quickly made to look like a poor one, as Cook struck again just before the hour mark. Middlesex skipper Stephen Eskenazi edged to Adam Wheater to leave the away side languishing on 38 for 4. Simon Harmer was then brought into the Essex attack, and it didn't take the off-spinner long to strike, as Martin Anderson lofted to deep mid-wicket to hand Ferozi Kushi a simple catch and Essex a 5th wicket. Middlesex's slim hopes of progression to the final were dwindling by the over, as Porter grabbed his 3rd wicket of the day. Former Essex loanee Robbie White edged to Alistair Cook to hand the hosts a second bowling bonus point, the score 68 for 6 heading into lunch. With 1 foot in the final at Lord's, Essex continued their charge as John Simpson fell in the 2nd over after the restart, edging through to Wheater to hand Harmer his 2nd wicket of the match and 25th of the competition. Middlesex all-rounder James Harris was doing his best to limit the damage with back-to-back boundaries, before he took a nasty blow from batting partner Blake Cullen at the non-striker's end to leave him needing treatment. When play resumed, Harris stayed well clear of Cullen's next attempt, which, to his relief, cleared the boundary for 6 to edge the visitors towards 100. Harris looked as though he'd fully recovered and guided Middlesex past the century mark as they continued to counter-attack. But Harris's rearguard effort was brought to an end by a fine delivery from Cook, his 3rd wicket of the day, to trap Harris for 34 as Essex finally broke the 8th wicket partnership. It didn't take long to rattle through the tail end as Cook grabbed his 4th wicket, as Thilan Wallala-Wheater was adjudged leg before as Essex bagged a full complement of bowling points in the process. Harmer finished Middlesex off with Blake Cullen the last man out, caught behind with his side all out for 138. Despite losing the toss, momentum now lay firmly with the South Group leaders Essex, as Sam Cook ended on figures with 4 for 27 and Jamie Porter 3 for 55, as Harris ended up top scoring for Middlesex with just 34. Looking to ramp home their early advantage, Alistair Cook and Paul Walter took to the crease, and the early signs were good for the hosts, as Cook helped them to 17 without loss by tea. But the former England captain would fail to add to his score, tempted in by Cullen's delivery and caught well by Eskenazi to leave Essex 18 for 1. Tom Wesley's poor form with the bat continued. He fell to Tim Murtagh for just 8 as the host's reply began to falter. They were struggling to contain Murtagh, and an unsettled Dan Lawrence was the next victim as he departed for a 6-ball duck. All of a sudden, Essex's hopes of building a lead had vanished, as the host lost a 4th wicket in the next over. Kushi trapped by James Harris to blow the game wide open, falling to 44 for 4. Runs were proving hard to come by at Chelmsford, and Ryan Tenderscarter rode his luck at times, but he and Paul Walter continued to rebuild for the hosts, before Walter fell 7 shy of his half-century off the bowling of Harris to end the partnership of 44 for the 5th wicket. Essex now 87 for 5, and the match still very much in the balance. Adam Wheater offered some resistance to bring up 100 as Essex closed on 108 for 5, 30 runs behind Middlesex with 5 wickets in hand, as the South Group leaders eye batting bonus points in day 2. Wheater's knock keeps Essex on course. Sam Cook kept Essex's Bob Willis Trophy final hopes on course, returning with season-best figures of 4 for 27 against Middlesex, as 15 wickets fell on day 1. Middlesex had been skittled out for 138 in Chelmsford. As South Group leaders, Essex closed day 1 on 108 for 5 in reply. The hosts were dealt a blow at the start of day 2, as all-rounder Ryan Tenderscarter appeared to strain his back running between the wickets in an innocuous-looking injury. Despite receiving treatment, Tenderscarter had to retire hurt on 31, bringing a 6-wicket stand with Adam Wheater to an end. With batting points a priority for Essex, some quick-fire boundaries from Wheater pushed the home side into the lead. Looking to defy Middlesex for as long as possible, Tenderscarter's replacement Simon Harmer also kicked on as Essex moved to 160 for 5. Wheater pushed away a couple to bring up his 50, the first half century of the match, with the Kent wicketkeeper taking 67 balls to do so, notching 7 fours in the process. On a frustrating morning for Middlesex, they'd eventually find a breakthrough courtesy of Martin Anderson, who trapped Harmer to depart for 21, Essex now 194 for 6. But Wheater continued his march, punishing a wider delivery from Anderson to move the home side to 200 and a first batting bonus point. Anderson would continue to be the danger man though, and he'd grab his second wicket of the morning as Aaron Beard edged a drive to Stephen Eskenazi at slip. 4 balls later and Anderson was at it again. Sam Cook the latest to fall for a duck, as the Middlesex all-rounder moved to figures of 3 for 20 from 6 overs to dash Essex's hopes of posting a big lead as they went into lunch 219 for 8. With the earlier injured Tenderscarter returning to the crease, Anderson was in no mood for sympathy as he picked up where he left off before lunch. An outside edge handing him a 4th wicket, with Essex's hopes of a second batting point looking very slim. Minutes later they were all out, as Jamie Porter fell to the bowling of Tim Murtagh for 3. Essex dismissed for 236 and unable to pick up more than just the 1 batting point. At the other end, Wheater ran out of partners as he finished unbeaten on 83 from 142 balls, with a blistering spell from Anderson seeing him the pick of the bowlers for Middlesex, with figures of 4 for 38. The visitors began their second innings at Chelmsford 98 runs behind, and opener Max Holden signalled his intentions early on, as all 17 of the visitors' opening runs went to his name. Sam Robson didn't partner him long, as he edged Sam Cook's delivery to Simon Harmer to give Essex the breakthrough. But Holden stood firm to bring up 50 for the visitors. However, on the stroke of tea, Essex struck again, with Nick Gubbins trapped LBW, leaving Middlesex still 40 runs in arrears on 58 for 2 at the interval. Aaron Beard struck shortly after the restart, and his first wicket of the match was worth waiting for, with Middlesex skipper Eskenazi's off-stump sent flying. The second wasn't bad either, this time rearranging Max Holden's stumps to leave Middlesex still 28 runs shy of breaking even, with 6 wickets remaining. Clearly in the mood, Beard struck again shortly after to dismiss Anderson and leave the game in danger of being over before the close of play, with the away side still trailing by 14. John Simpson and Robbie White did their best to hang in there for Middlesex as they edged level. But Essex would strike just before the close of play to bring the 36 partnership to an end, as White departed leg before to Harmer, as the visitors closed the day on 123 for 6 and a slender lead of 25 runs against the South Group leaders, who very much remain in the driving seat heading into day 3.
a lead of 198 were Ten Descartes, who made 43, and Adam Wheater, who was not out 83 at the end, and ably supported by Simon Harmer, 32. So a lead of 98 is useful, and as I say, at the moment Middlesex are a mere 25 ahead with only 4 wickets in hand, but we've all watched enough cricket over the many years not to take anything for granted at all. My name is Dick Davis. I'm delighted that just beside me is Kevin Hand. Welcome.
Not as delighted as I am.
Oh dear.
But I'm here. And beside you.
We'll argue about that later.
How are you, Dick? It's good to see you again.
I'm fine, thank you.
In this strange world that we live in this strange summer, it feels like I've seen you in quick succession now, and that's a good feeling, I must say.
It's odd, isn't it? Yeah, the way everything's compacted into not much more than a month.
Yeah, I mean, there's some, of course, around the circuit with the regional basis this year that we just won't see at all this summer, but it's lovely to see you again.
And you too. So it's Simon Harmer going to bowl the first over of the day from the river end. He's bowling to Simpson, and it's bounces off the pad. No addition to the score. Simpson not out 16 overnight.
As learned listeners will know, that was our on-air greeting to each other. Our off-air greeting was very different.
Oh yes, good Lord. Oh, not you again. Simpson comes forward, plays it just backward of square on the offside, fielded by Aaron Beard, who bowled. I understand. I have to say I understand. I wasn't here. I'm not going to pretend I was, but I understand bowled very well indeed. And Harmer in again, right arm round. Oh, and that gets the better of the batsman. This is the ideal situation for Harmer, not only on a day like this and a wicket that famously helps spin, but his off breaks to the left-hander are naturally leg breaks, and there's 2 slips lurking. That's just played competently out to mid-on. 2 slips lurking and a bat pad, and Harmer is really in his element under these circumstances. Moves in now, wearing number 11 on his back, bowls, and Simpson goes forward, smothers the spin that there might be, and there probably is. He turns it quite away, but also gets bounce, and bounce is just as big an ally to a slow bowler as his turn. And Harmer moves in again and bowls, and again Simpson comes forward and plays it solidly, trickles out in the offside. So an uneventful first over, although it was the third one, I think, that certainly turned away from the bat, and a moral victory, but moral victories don't count. So the end of the over, and Middlesex are still 123 for 6 after 1 over of the third day.
We walk away from our off-air joust going, well, I had the moral victory.
Yeah, that's right.
We console ourselves with that. Thank you, Paul. He's brought me a cup of coffee. Filled to the brim the kettle this morning. It might not need to be, because we might not be here this long, or that long, unless Simpson and Harris can produce something brilliant here. Essex well on top, the champion county, and Middlesex, real pretenders in this group, because they're the lowest ranked team of the South group. So have they been punching above their weights? This match perhaps would suggest so. Oh dear. We've gone awry.
We've gone altogether.
We'll still be on the Essex stream though, so we'll keep NASA in for the Essex, the good folks listening on the Essex stream, while Dick redials our stream for the BBC Sport website. There are 3 slips in place: a point, a cover, and a mid-off, a mid-on, a mid-wicket, and a long leg. Harris has 3 and Simpson has 16. So a very good morning to you all listening on the Essex stream at the moment. You'll have to bear with us just as you hear that dial tone. It'll be momentary while we reconnect to the BBC, but we won't leave you in the lurch in the meantime. Again, because we might not be here for that long, so we should talk and keep going with it. Here is Beard. He's right arm over, bowls him off stumps out of the ground. Harris has gone, and Middlesex 123 for 6, for 7 indeed now, as that is another wicket for Cook, and trouble for Middlesex this morning now.
1386. 429905.
1 or 2 technicals, and that number doesn't seem to work for our BBC link back to BBC Essex HQ. So a phone call incoming, I feel, from you chaps to BBC Essex. I'm going to hang it up only because it's buzzing while it's not as it won't connect. So hopefully, listeners, that will just be our cue rather than the mix that you hear going through the stream. But apologies if you do hear that dial tone and well, the one that basically tells you it hasn't connected. Familiar old sounds for us all when we used to dial things on telephones. That's what it's still like for us here. But Paul will call the BBC Essex studio. So those of you with us on the Essex stream, bear with us as we have a few technicals. And for those of you who are listening on the BBC Sport website, well, you can't hear us, so sorry. And if you have just tuned across to the Essex stream, we'll have that BBC stream up and running as quickly as we can. In the meantime, it will be Cook, 2 for 19. I may have in the chaos called him Beard. My apologies to Cook if I did. Cullen is the new batsman. Middlesex lead by 25 runs. They have only 3 wickets remaining. And it is Cullen who awaits as in comes Cook, bowls to him, and it's defended back up the track, and there's no run. So if you want to tweet us at Kevin Hand BBC, at BBC Essex Sport to get through.
Yep, okay.
And yeah, love to hear from you. The T20 campaign for Middlesex will still be going beyond this, of course, but
yes,
a final day of the first class summer. It could be for Middlesex unless something spectacular happens here. This is down the leg side from Cook through to the gloves of the keeper, and there is no run. Dick and Paul are working hard at the moment to try and get us back on air for
do you want to hang on while
the BBC stream. So again, listeners on the BBC, on the Essex stream, do bear with us for a moment with the technicals. And yes, an old dial-up tone. I suppose the mobile phones, you probably have the option that your mobile phone still makes these noises. Just notice his. Cook is in bowls, and this is run down to third man by Cullen with soft hands and an angle bat, and he's off the mark with 4. 127 for 7. Capable batsman Cullen. Simpson will need him to be, with Harris gone. And only Wallalawita and Mertz come. We are connected back to BBC Essex, and hopefully BBC Essex have got us connected to the BBC Sport website. So I'll apologise now for anybody that lost us briefly there. You did also miss Middlesex losing the wicket of James Harris, off stump taken out of the ground by Cook, who in the mayhem I may or may not have identified as Beard, so apologies to Cook if I did. Cook, Harmer and Wheat are the 3 slips. There's a third man, a point and a wide mid-off, mid-on, mid-wicket and long leg, and off goes Cook again. Last ball of his 15th over. He's right arm over, he bowls, that thumps onto the pads. Height will be a problem with that, going down the leg side as well, and to long leg, that deflects for a leg by. Middlesex are 128 for 7, they lead by 30. Somehow they need to put a 1 in front of that 30 to give them any chance of having something to bowl at here, Dick.
Yes, you would have thought so. Yes.
You're all okay.
And yes, I apologise for that gremlin, as it's known in the trade.
Yes. It was a good movie, but not so good for broadcasts, Gremlins.
No, that's right. So, yep, a very, very useful start to the day by Essex, obviously, with Cook taking the wicket and somewhat spectacularly bowling Harris. Overnight score of 3.
They may as well have a thrash at every ball, says Paul Howden on this morning's effort for Middlesex. Well, Cullen's a capable batsman. This is a big test, though, against Harmer.
Who moves in over the wicket now, and that goes down the onside.
Yeah, as a young man, he's looked good with the bat, but it's hard to imagine that he'll have experienced something like Harmer before, and the technical ability he'll need to play him in the guile.
Yeah, Harmer to Cullen. Cullen plays that defensively, studiously, with the head right over the ball. And the score remains on 128 for 7. As Harmer moves in again and bowls to Cullen. And that's edge to first slip, but presumably only off the pad, or maybe off nothing. Pad, do you think?
Yeah, yeah, maybe just a bit of pad. Not enough excitement or disappointment.
No excitement whatsoever. As Harmer moves in again and bowls to Cullen. Cullen goes on the back foot again, and again plays it correctly with his head over the ball, and it just trickles out on the onside. Harmer here moves in again and bowls, gives it more air, and again Cullen just goes forward. It trickles out to mid-on, where it's picked up by the Essex skipper Tom Wesley.
Yeah, Cullen he's been around England under-19s and things like that, so maybe he's had a subcontinent tour with the England under-19s or somebody, and played on a turning track before. But Harmer is a real test, isn't
Well, he is. There are a few bigger tests, really, against slow bowling than Simon Harmer when he's on song. But he played all that over out quite confidently and competently. A maiden over, but yeah, no cause for excitement from the Essex point of view in that over. So Essex, another maiden over from Harmer, but Essex will be pleased with their opening 10 minutes or so. And understandably it's going to be Sam Cook who continues from the far end. We can take emails from essex.cricket@bbc.co.uk, not essex.sport. Still some people are emailing at essex.sport. We eventually pick them up, but by the time they pick it up it's several days later, and therefore rather lose their sense of immediacy. So essex.cricket@bbc.co.uk. We'll be delighted to hear from you.
Alex says final hour, you mean, Kev, not final day of the first class season for Middlesex.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Well, yeah, it's got to be these two. Walla Luita is a young, inexperienced batsman. And Mercer at 11 likes a thrash. Here's Cook around the wicket to Simpson, who drives to mid-off, and there is no run. 128 for 7. They knew that this was going to be the real test of them. The word coming out of the Sussex match, the victory that set up the at least chance to come here and beat Essex and try and top the group, was the Middlesex were very, very happy with all but 3 hours of their first class summer, which resulted in a defeat to Hampshire. You know, and that was a game that they felt that they should have won, but for 3 silly hours. This ball's just full of a length from Cook to Simpson, pushed up to mid-off, and there's no run. Basically a session, an afternoon session I think it was, where Middlesex collapsed. I think, well, I'll tell you exactly what it is now if the notes are in front of me. 8 for 77 I think was the collapse, leaving Hampshire a very tricky chase of 158, which they managed, and they managed it with 3 wickets to spare, although 2 of them would have really struggled to bat, so it was almost a 1-wicket victory in that sense for Hampshire, so it was tight. And that's where that silly session where Middlesex only needed about 45 more runs probably as forward goes. Simpson pushing up to mid-on, and there is no run, and I picked that figure because I think that was the difference between the first and the second innings off the top of my head. Yes, it was 44 runs was the difference between the first innings, but yes, but coming here, with all of that said, coming here they knew that this was the real test, this was the one. Harmer, Cook at the top of the order for Essex, but you know, the champion county. Cook runs in, bowls, and this is run down to fine leg. Long leg comes around, just a single for Simpson, and he moves to 17. 129 for 7. Champion county elect.
Well, yes. I'm still not quite sure whether this counts as. I know it's the Bob Willis Trophy, but will the records show that whoever wins this trophy were county champions?
I mean, I think it certainly. If Essex win this group, this is arguably the toughest group, I think. Win this group, then go and win a one-off match at Lords, quite possibly against Somerset. I think that really will be worthy as county champions. As here's Cullen facing Cook, solidly defending into the onside. There's no run. Yeah,
what I'm really getting at is the terminology.
No, you're probably right. No. I mean, they'll be the winners of this year's first-class competition, but I mean, you know, with the reports that there are, quite possibly this will be the format going forward.
Yes.
Which I wouldn't be wholly against. Not regionalised, maybe for the next couple of years if still COVID needs to be resolved, to cut down on travelling and folks moving around the country. But yeah, I've quite enjoyed the conference.
Yes.
The chance that everybody can win the competition this year. As in comes Cook, bowls and beats the right-handed Cullen. Through it goes to the keeper. There's no run. It's the end of the over. 129 for 7. Middlesex 138. And quite frankly, if it's a Somerset-Essex final, I don't think anybody could argue that, well, by no fluke are they in the final. Everybody had the chance to get there, but the best 2 have probably got there.
Well, obviously I'm a little biased, but I wouldn't disagree. I put it no stronger than that. Of course, Kent were within well, I mean, Kent could still win this
yes.
If Essex fail to and Kent do, but they didn't pick up any batting points in their game against Hampshire. They skittled for a lot fewer than 200, so that might cost them. But Essex would be understandably confident of victory in this one, but it's not done and dusted by any means yet, as Harmer moves in and bowls, and Simpson works it away on the onside, and it is indeed a good shot, and it goes through mid-wicket. Oh, will it just stop? No, it's just got the legs on it to get over the line at mid-wicket to the left-hander.
Apologies for interrupting. I don't usually do that, but I had to say that was a really good shot.
Look, for 25 years I've worked with Paul Newton. I'm used to being interrupted. And I'm married, so I'm used to being interrupted.
I'll stop at you two. You've still got 15 minutes until you're on air together. Middlesex batting permitting.
As Harmer moves in, bowls to Simpson. Simpson goes on the back foot, plays it defensively, trickles. Well, I was going to say trickles back to Harmer. It doesn't. He still has to walk a few yards to go and retrieve it.
It feels like this is the key matchup now, Harmer and Simpson. The mighty fine off-spinner to the left-handed batsman, who has opened over the years, batted at 6, batted at 5, 7.
Yes. Faces up to Harmer now and goes forward.
There we go.
Yeah, outside edge, but it was all along the floor, so there was no reason for excitement from the Essex
and that's why that shot for 4 through a straight mid-wicket wide of mid-on felt such a good one from Simpson on the back foot earlier.
Harmer in again. Simpson again goes forward solidly, purposefully, obdurately.
With every wicket you revise down, well, what could they defend Middlesex? Could the 110, 120 would at least give them something to bowl at if they got a couple of quick wickets?
Oh yes. Harmer in again, and again Simpson goes forward solidly, and the ball does just about make its way back to Harmer.
But Wheater's effort has really hurt Middlesex in this match. In otherwise, what's a low-scoring game, isn't it?
Yes, certainly. Harmer in again and bowls. And again, a textbook defensive shot from Simpson, sees the ball trickle back to the bowler. End of the over. Yet again another maiden, and the Middlesex are 133 for 7, a lead of 35.
Yeah, and Simpson 21. If he can play, I was going to say even half the role that Wheater did, but probably not. He probably nearly needs to play the full Wheater role, doesn't he? I don't think another 40 or so runs here will make a huge difference from him. But if he could get a sizable 50 with just a little chip in of 20 at the other end from Cullen, 20 from Wheater, and whatever Murtagh musters, then just maybe Middlesex got 130 or so to bowl at, and like I say, the start's all important then, isn't it? If they have them 10 for 2, you all of a sudden rub your hands together and say it could be a good finish, this one as his. Cookie's in bowls, and Cullen leaves alone a full one outside of the off stump. Harris, fine batsman as well, still awaiting his maiden first-class century. You wake up this morning, you wonder, will it be the day today? I'm sure he did. But off stump sent spitting out of the ground.
And of course, with the obvious exception, not just because he's a knight of the realm, but because he's a pretty useful batsman, with the obvious exception of Alistair Cook, then the top order, the top few at Essex haven't had the best of season. They're a bit brittle.
Cook, past the umpire, bowls just short of a length left alone outside of the off stump. Yet Essex have been so successful in the last few years.
Yes, they. Yeah, now I always get this phrase right. The total is greater. No, the whole is better than the sum of the individual parts. It's something like that.
It's along those lines.
It's along those lines.
And we know what you mean. Oh, Paul's ready to correct us. No, you got it right. He's given you. You got an A star from the teacher at the back.
Well, you don't get those very often.
A minus for that hesitation, apparently. This ball's short, and hooking is Cullen, and he's hooked it through to the keeper. Little feather through to the keeper down the leg side. Cullen looking to hook at a sharp rising delivery from Cook, and he was late in it, wasn't he? I don't think he wasn't really in position for it. The torso moved, the hands moved, but nothing really hip downwards got any movement on it. At Middlesex have the wicket column moving again, 133 for 7, and Cullen has gone for 8, sorry, and Cullen has gone for 4. Caught Wheater, bowled Cook, and well, here comes Wheater. Cullen's a capable batsman. I think Wheater certainly knows one end of the bat from the other, but it'll be 2 left-handers up against Cullen now. And how will the left-handed Sri Lankan-born batsman, spinner by trade, Wheater, go against Harmer? It's got to go against Cook first.
I'm very impressed by the way the pronunciation just trips off your tongue. I'm sure you've been practicing over the season,
Yes.
but it's Wallalawita.
Perfect.
Wallalawita.
Perfect. You actually find that it's not quite as terrifying as it first
Oh no,
appears.
it's not. No, I mean
It rather rolls off the tongue, the Wallalawita.
the worst from the pronunciation point of view, maybe from other points of view as well, that's another subject, is when Essex had an overseas player called Lonwabo Sotsobi.
Yes.
And we'd just learned how to pronounce his name and suddenly he went back to South Africa.
Is that when he threw the toys out of the pram and said,
I've had enough.
yeah.
Yes.
What did he was quite derogatory though, wasn't he, about Essex and
yes.
no place to play cricket or something? Was something along those lines?
And he didn't.
Well,
And he didn't.
any derogatoriness, if there is such a noun, was totally mutual.
Yes. Cook's around the wicket, bowls, and this is played into the offside defensively by Wallalawita. There's no run. Yes, I do remember it was quite a fallout, wasn't it?
God, was it ever? Yes.
To which you boys
Essex-
revelled in it, I seem to remember as well.
Essex haven't made many bad overseas signings, but
Yeah.
that one does stand out. Lonwabo Sotsobi.
What's that? Whatever happened to him? I haven't heard much of him since he left Essex.
No, I have no idea.
All downhill after you leave Essex, see?
No,
You should have listened.
The odd thing was, when he came here, I think he was ranked the third best ODI bowler in
Yes,
the world.
he did have a fine start to his career, but not quite sure what's happened since. As here comes Cook, wide on the crease, bowls. Wallalawita's behind this one, pushing back up the track. No run, 133 for 8. 35 run leads, and again Middlesex somehow have to find a way of putting a 1 in front of that target as it currently stands.
I've had an email from Istanbul Steve. Greetings from Istanbul. Well, greetings to you, Steve. Essex firmly on top and looking forward to a victory today, as only a fan can say. But probably the better side, with Wheater's best not coming at the right time. I hope he goes on for the final. Brackets maybe the bish bash bosh stuff as well. Couple of questions. Is the weather set fair? Yeah, yes, I think it's. Come back to that after this.
Cook from the Hayes close end remains around the wicket, wide on the crease, bowl short. Wallalawita goes for it. I think he shouldered it through to the keeper. Yes, he has. He went for the hook shot, took on Cook much as Cullen did, but on this occasion it comes off a bit of the body rather than the glove or bat, and through it goes to Wheater, a dot ball. 133 for 8. Middlesex 5 runs short of matching their first innings total. Wicket maiden for Cook, who has 3 for 24 from 17 with 7 maidens.
Yeah, is the weather set fair? Well, I don't think we're going to get any rain. Well, it's fair. It's certainly not sunny and bright, but it's overcast. You just get the impression. I haven't looked at the forecast, to be honest, but you just get the impression it's probably going to be like this all day, neither sunny nor wet. So just one of those days when I'd say they haven't really sent us any weather today. And who at this point would you say is vying for the player of the match? Well, I've only watched today's play. I was away for the weekend in Southwold on the Suffolk coast, and obviously I kept an eye on the score, but I'm not in a position to say who's player of the match. But no doubt Paul Newton will have a point of view.
Cook's 7th so far is the pick of the bowlers, and obviously the 83 not out from Wheater, very much stand alone in this game.
Yes, as Harmer moves in, bowls to Simpson, and he gets an edge, but they've taken one of the slips out, somewhat surprisingly, but obviously a man like Harmer knows what he's doing. So there's only one slip, so Alistair Cook.
And that again remains Middlesex's final hope, that Simpson can somehow do what Wheater did, get to 80, and Middlesex would have a 120, 130 lead.
Yeah, Harmer in again, and Simpson just goes forward solidly. Come back to the rest of your email in a moment or two, but Steve, but obviously when Harmer's bowling, not an awful lot of time for chat as Harmer moves in again around the wicket to the left-handed. Simpson goes on the back foot, plays it out so fractionally square on the offside, fielded by Aaron Beard. Local lad plays his club cricket for Chelmsford, as does Sam Cook. Well, I say does in the present tense. They probably won't play for Chelmsford Cricket Club again for a while, and that's given more air and slightly fuller length, and Simpson has the confidence to drive straight to Wesley, a shortish extra cover. Still no addition to the score of 133 for 8. Middlesex having lost 2 wickets today already. Oh, and that gets the better of Simpson, and that's the perfect delivery. Okay, so Simpson didn't get an edge, but that's exactly what Harmer is looking for. And Trudges, well, no, not Trudges, that would be totally unfair. He's a very brisk cricketer. Everything that Harmer does, he does quickly, apart from actually let go of the ball, which is bowled with great prowess but no great speed.
More of a strut than a trudge there at the end, and he probably earned that, hasn't he?
Yes, I think so. So the end of another very hasty maiden over. Steve's email. Great to hear the dulcet tones of BBC Essex commentary and Middlesex.
Thank you.
Davis and Newton. Well, I'm reading it. A wonderful double act. When do you go on road with the stage show?
Yes. Yeah.
P.S. Sam Cooke and Jamie Porter to open for England. Then he says smiles afterwards. Yes, I can't really see that happening. I hope not.
Yeah.
I'd rather see them plying their trade for Essex.
Here is Cook, 2 slips scratched down behind the left-handed Wallaluita, who's forward, trying to play off his leg, so get a leg by towards the square leg umpire as mid-wicket comes to collect. 134 for 8. Simpson on strike on 21, Wallaluita 4 balls, let's get off the mark. Just Tim Mercer's come, still waiting that maiden first-class century from Tim Mercer as well.
How near to it has he ever got?
Into the 70s. He's got an 50. He came to Middlesex as an all-rounder.
Oh, I beg his
from
pardon.
Surrey, and through his universities, British universities, he's very much regarded as an all-rounder. But batting's tailed off over the years for Middlesex, but he still has his moments. As in comes Cook, bowls, and Simpson is beaten through to the keeper. There's no run. And he'll have a job to do alongside Simpson if it is Simpson who is still there. Well, he'll have a job to do if Wallaluita's there, but it'll be a very different job. He'll be quite aggressive if it's he and Wallaluita left. If Simpson's at the other end, then Middlesex will be desperate for him to play straight. And just drop that bat down on the ball, especially against Harmer. But Cook, Porter and Beard have been a fearsome trio in this match for Essex, as this one's just full of a length and bumped back to the bowler by Simpson, watchfully, patiently. The ball is 63 overs old now, so for Simpson and Co versus Cook and Porter and Beard, they've also got the bonus that there isn't a second new ball to the 90th over, so there is that carrot dangling for Simpson. If he can just try and get himself in, obviously Harmer's a very different matter altogether for Simpson, particularly being a left-hander, but against these guys, if he can just take his time, as Cook's in, bowls, and that nips back and hits the pads, but well, from our angle, very difficult to judge, but suffice to say that Essex weren't really interested in that appeal. They just got a little bit excited, whether there's a bit of bat involved as it nipped back at him, or whether he'd got a cross outside the line of off. I'd suggest bat by the fact that they didn't go through with the appeal.
You've already demonstrated your acumen with the pronunciation of Wallaluita. What about the name that comes before it? Is that as it looks?
Tillan.
A silent H.
Yep, Tillan Wallaluita.
Thank you.
Cook bowls, Simpson defends to mid-off, to cover, and there's no run. Yes, 22-year-old, born in Sri Lanka, moved to England when he was 12, joined Middlesex when he was 14, and qualifies, well, becomes he's non-qualified at the moment. He qualifies in November, so had Peter Hanscom been here, Wallaluita would not have been able to play this game because he'd have been overseas. Round the wicket comes Cook, bowls to Simpson, big appeal, this could be close, not out. There's been a collision, they've thrown down the stumps, goodness me, as Wallaluita through, he is, it was all happening. There was a collision between Simpson and Cook. Cook apologises. The ball, interestingly, wasn't thrown to the non-striker's end, and I wonder, was that a wonderful piece of sportsmanship there to not do so after the collision, because Simpson could quite easily have been run out at the non-striker's end. It was thrown to the wicket-keeper's end by Harmer, where he threw down the stumps, but Wallaluita was obviously home. Well, he certainly was in the umpire's opinion. I have to say, it looked tight from here, because Wallaluita looked a little slow on it himself, but all eyes immediately went to the collision between Simpson, who's now just rolling around his neck, obviously just jarred himself slightly, the back of his neck seems a bit sore, and he's turning his head one way or the other. He's taken his helmet off now. Whether the physio will come out and have a look, no, all appears okay. The helmet's going back on, but fortunately it wasn't too bad a collision, but it obviously did. I mean, he must have bumped his head by the way he's rolling his neck around, but anyway, he keeps the strike because it's the end of the over. 22 for Simpson, 1 for Wallaluita, and Middlesex are 135 for 8, leading by 37.
And Harmer to continue from the River End, the River Can, and the end from which we're commentating and have been for as long as I've been involved, as Harmer moves in round the wicket to the left hand. Simpson, who goes on the back foot, plays it out into the covers. No addition to the score of 135 for 8, with Simpson not out 22. Wulalawita not out a single, and the former of those two faces up to the bowling and goes forward solidly. It trickles out on the offside, and Dan Lawrence it is who picks it up at short extra cover. I think I called him Wesley a few hours ago, so those who are watching on the stream saying, what do you know about it? That's nudged down backward of square on the offside.
In this Harmer over, it's time for me to say goodbye, because Paul will be with you for the 11 o'clock, won't he? So a quick
Indeed.
goodbye from me.
Right.
A few words from Dick Davis. It'll be Paul Newton.
Thank you, Sir Kevin, very much. See you in half an hour's time as Harmer moves in again and bowls, and that's clipped away backward of square, no, just forward of square, probably on the onside, and they go through for a single. Not an entirely assured shot, probably came off a thick inside edge, but it was along the carpet, so no problem. Wulalawita now takes guard from the umpire, and another left-handed batsman. Harmer moves in, bowls to Wulalawita, and he pushes it out on the offside. No addition to the score on a grey, overcast day, but a day in which I don't think we're going to see any great precipitation of rain. As Harmer moves in again, bowls Wulalawita. Doesn't quite get to the right pitch of the ball, somewhat sort of plays across it at a bit of an angle, but in the end played it confidently and competently enough. No addition to the score, 136 for 8, with Wulalawita not out a single and Simpson not out 23, and the clatter is Paul Newton coming into place as that wasn't a criticism of my learned colleague, I hasten to add.
Oh, go on, spoil yourself.
No. The Honourable Member for West Essex? East Essex.
Yes,
East Essex, sorry.
Just got there in time. Dick will be going into the news very shortly.
I will indeed. As Cook moves in round the wicket to Simpson, and Simpson plays it out on the onside, no addition to the score.
While I think of it, thank you very much to Jeff Leonard, who's emailed me this morning and wishes Dick and Kevin all the very best. Thank you very much, Jeff. Always a pleasure to... I know you're probably listening, as you do tend to do when Gloucestershire don't have a game, albeit in the saddest of circumstances on this occasion. But you're very welcome. Thank you very much for your support and contribution.
As Cook moves in, bowls to Simpson, and Simpson plays that solidly, defensively, trickles out on the onside, picked up by Aaron Beard. After I've done my update, we'll ask you to amplify that comment, just saying under sad circumstances. I think most...
Oh, the Gloucestershire game having to be abandoned.
Yes, we'll come back to that after, when I've done my update, because at the moment I'm trying to listen and talk. Not very good at multitasking, I'm the wrong gender. As Cook moves in, bowls to Simpson. Simpson plays on the back foot, trickles out on the offside. Picked up at mid-off by Dan Lawrence.
Just for a change, Dick, in this game, it hasn't been Simon Harmer who's been the absolute destroyer-in-chief, and all three Essex quicker bowlers have bowled very well.
Yes. And it's strange that neither Cook nor Porter plays in the one-day side.
Yeah, I agree.
No point now, probably, as Cook moves in, bowls. And again, Simpson goes on the back foot, plays it defensively.
Even last season, when Essex for the first time won the T20 at the 17th attempt, Jamie Porter played only in the semi-final, and Sam Cook played only in the final, and it was nice for them to pick up a medal. But particularly this year, when Sam Cook was rested for game, or wasn't picked for the second of the 5 matches, and of course nobody got a bowl at Arundel, so it's not as if he's had a heavy workload.
No, as Cook moves in, bowls to Simpson. Simpson again goes on the back foot. He's looked very solid this morning for the 35 minutes play we've had. From what I recall, he's only been beaten once. Just go and do an update now.
Bob Willis Trophy match against Middlesex at Chelmsford. BBC Essex's Dick Davies is live at the County Ground.
Well, Essex have had a good morning so far, bearing in mind the match started, or the day started at 10:30, because resuming on 123 for 6, Middlesex have now moved on to 136 for 8, so they've obviously lost 2 wickets. First of all, they lost James Harris, comprehensively bowled by Sam Cook, losing his off stump in the process for his overnight score of 3, and then when the squad moved on to 133, Blake Cullen was caught by Adam Wheater down the leg side, also off the bowling of Cook for 4. So at the moment, John Simpson is the main obstacle to Essex's success. He's batting very solidly indeed, and he's been joined by Tilan Walalawita, I knew I'd make a mess of that, the Sri Lankan, and Essex have had a very good first 35 minutes here at Chelmsford.
Just a dot ball ended the over there from Sam Cook. And just to let people know as well that Derbyshire continue to add to the intrigue of the whole qualifying for Lords, because they were 61 for 7 replying to Lancashire's 219. A moment or two ago they were 140 for 7. Terrific 8th wicket partnership approaching, getting on for 100 as Harmer begins a new over from the river end, and it's solidly played out by Walalawita. But well done to Derbyshire, they're making a real fight of it. They would have to not only get a bonus point by reaching 200, but also win the game against Lancashire to pip Essex at the post, as it were, as Harmer's in and bowls, and this ball is just played out in front of him. Walalawita, the man on strike, and Simpson's played particularly well, 23 off 115 deliveries. Real vigil, I think we could call it, as here's Walalawita sweeping. He gets hold of that well, and that's going to go for 4. A very good shot indeed, and Middlesex move up to 140 for 8, and add 2 to that, and or to the last 2 digits, and you get 42, which is the extent of Middlesex's lead now, having trailed by 98 on first innings.
Yeah, so who do you reckon at this moment, to use Steve's phrase, is vying for player of the match?
Well, obviously Sam Cook's had an impressive game. It's got to be high on the list, with 7 wickets at the moment in the match as Harmer comes in and bowls, and that ball moves away. I have to say, because we know, Dick, that Chelmsford is a bowler's pitch more than a batsman's, I probably actually give it to the man who's head and shoulders above anyone else in the run scoring stakes in the game, Adam Wheater, 83 not out. Has appeal for LBW here, and not out, says umpire Paul Pollard, and score remaining at 140 for 8. So yes, for me I'd make it between Wheater and Sam Cook. And on this particular occasion, as much as I'm a great fan of Sam Cook, but because it's not been easy for batsman Adam Wheater. And here's another attempted sweep, but it turns prodigiously, and Adam Wheater knows roughly where the ball's going to go as much as anybody knows, and he got himself in the absolute perfect position to take it. If that had been the first ball Wheater had seen of Harmer, it would have almost certainly gone for 4 byes. 140 for 8 at the end of the over.
We've had another email from Craig from Wickford, now in Yeovil. It says Yeovil, Somerset. Thought I'd drop you a line from my home office in Somerset, excuse me, as an Essex exile while watching the live feed. A big advantage of working from home. It's looking hopeful for an Essex v Somerset final at the moment, which will be brilliant for me, as hopefully I can carry on the bragging rights at my local cricket club. Last year was good with the last game of the season, but beating my locals in a one-off final would be even better, as that's played down to Jamie Porter at long leg for a single.
I can only imagine, Craig, your grief, using the word rather sardonically, at the rain that fell at Taunton, which has sort of become more your local patch, which enabled Essex to escape with a draw on September 26, 2019, and thereby the title.
And even more grief that subsequently Somerset incurred points penalty.
Yes, indeed.
For the wicket.
Sorry, it's you.
Oh yes, beg your pardon. Keep forgetting it's all turnovers this season. It's played out into the covers. Throw comes in at the stumps at the bowler's end, but misses. I think the batsman was home and dry. The next paragraph. With regards to the format of the county championship next season, I think 3 divisions of 6 will be much better, with each team playing 10 games. With relegations and promotions, and maybe even some form of playoff if they want the 1-off 5-day games at the end of the season. Much better than the sorry, it's gone off the edge of the screen. Convoluted. Come back to that in a moment. Oh, and that was a good delivery. Brought the batsman forward and then moved off the wicket just enough. Maybe just too much because it didn't find the edge actually, and went through the wicketkeeper. That was a corking delivery. Much better than the convoluted divisions of 10 and 8 idea that they came up with this year, with not playing each team twice. It would also mean that each county will be playing different counties every season rather than the same old ones every year. Yep, thanks Craig very much indeed.
Thanks Craig.
As Cook moves in again. I think the format I'd read, I mean nearly every time you open the paper, you know, there's a different suggestion as to what it might be, and everybody is entitled to their guesses and speculations, and the general opinion seems to be that next season might be fairly similar to this, only playing everybody twice regionally, but that it wouldn't keep on being regional because otherwise it would get a bit stale, and that after that it would be I don't know in what way, but maybe 3 divisions then. That's just played out defensively. But so it doesn't mean that Essex supporters would only be watching the likes of Hampshire, Middlesex, Kent, etc.
No, I do agree that it needs more variety, particularly as in the both 50-over competitions and the T20 recently, they've been the same groups, you know, albeit in 2 divisions there rather than 3. Just a little point on that 12-point penalty Somerset incurred for the pitch on the final day. Of course, it was carried forward, but it hasn't applied to this season. Be interesting to see if they eventually have to pay it.
Well, I believe, from what I understand, looking at various websites and media, yes, it will apply for next season. Almost definitely. So they'll start off with a -12 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It was 12. The other thing we need to elaborate on is the unfortunate circumstances in which the Gloucestershire game was brought to a premature close at lunchtime on the first day.
Yes, I mean, obviously, well, the miracle is that it's taken till the last zonal round before any game has actually been affected, and you have to say very well done to the ECB for getting this competition together. And I was just thinking, Dick, that had the wish of actually the majority of the counties to play only 50-over cricket in T20 this season actually carried, just break in because Harmer's beginning a new over from the river end, bowls to Wallaluita, who leaves the ball that turns outside off stump.
What I'm trying to get you to explain to listeners, maybe I'm not putting it clearly enough, is not everybody is aware as to why it was terminated at lunchtime on the first day.
Well, they are who listen to our service because we explained it yesterday, this ball goes. But yeah, I mean, basically one of the Northamptonshire squad, who'd therefore been in contact with the rest of the players, tested positive for coronavirus, and therefore the match had to be abandoned in order to stop the alarming increase in spread of the disease. And this is a play and a miss from Wallaluita. It goes on an extravagant drive, but doesn't get the edge. But I am very pleased we've played this version of the game and not just a white ball cricket as Harmer bowls, and that turns prodigiously. Wallaluita himself, and I don't mean this against him, other teams that Essex play generally, they'll have a spinner, but they don't turn the ball anything like the way this man can. It's not just that Essex prepare pitches that will suit him. So this ball goes round the back of Wallaluita and nicely taken by Wheater. But I think if there'd been a big gap with no red ball cricket played in the whole of a year, I think it really would have been a bad miss, and I think by playing this competition the players would have benefited enormously. There's a single here as Wallaluita guides the ball away just in front of square leg, and that takes the score to 143 for 8. Wallaluita moves up to 7, and John Simpson 24 off 120 deliveries. 45 is the overall lead. So very well done to I'm told particularly Steve Elworthy at the ECB, who apparently has been the major inspiration behind not only the Bob Willis Trophy taking place, but the arrival in England of the excellent West Indies and Pakistani teams, who again provided wonderful series.
So 143 for 8, and Cook to continue from the, or is it? No, I think it's a bowling change because Wesley is involved, and indeed he's talking to Aaron Beard. Give us a quick opportunity. Thank you, Diana from Calgary, very, very much as ever for your email.
Thank you, Diana.
She thinks I'm the right age to be able to hustle, not to be able to hustle people to get a new password, but not too young to have resorted to Twitter. The abandonment of email. No, I don't do Twitter at all. I've never seen the point of it. That's played out on the onside, no addition to the score.
Well, of course, as fellow ancient monuments, I have to say I'm totally with you on that one.
Yeah, I can't see why anybody would be interested in what I think on anything, so I wouldn't go on Twitter, you know.
And I think particularly, Dick, if you're a high-profile cricketer, whatever, it can lead to an awful lot of trouble if you say something out of place, or even that's not out of place.
Yes, of course, that's one of the sort of drawbacks of modern communication. You can suddenly, in a heated moment, key something in. That's outside the off stump, goes through to the keeper. And you know, sometimes you've sent it off, and maybe sometimes only a matter of seconds later you think, oh gosh, perhaps I shouldn't have said that, really.
Well, yes.
At which time it's out in the ether for the whole population of the world to see.
I'll give you an example from Taunton last year. There were a number of Essex people there who, when it looked as if Essex might lose the game, were absolutely incensed, you know, at the quality of the pitch, and they might have sort of emailed something they would later have regretted. You know, an hour later it's a draw, and you think, no, hold your peace, it's not worth it.
No, quite. As Aaron Beard moves in round the wicket, right arm to the left-handed Walla Lawita, and he's played out to the offside. Apparently yesterday, you see, I'm one of those that wasn't listening yesterday, although I'm listening today because I was on holiday. You announced, Paul, that you were between two rappers. Diana says it sounds as if you were transformed into some kind of odd sweet.
Yes, that's one interpretation. The actual one was that we were talking about rap music, and Don professed to be a rapper, and so did Kevin, very, very sadly.
Oh dear. Way, the off stump goes cartwheeling out of, well, that's a cliche, but nevertheless it does. Goes out of the ground, and I think just beaten for pace there, because Essex have some, I don't like using the word stars either, but they have some sort of higher profile players, and Porter and Cook and Wheater, but Aaron Beard is, I think he probably enjoys it actually. He's somewhat underrated, and I've always thought he was a very good bowler, and he proved it there. And also he's underrated as regards speed. He's not a tall man. He's only a little fella. I don't mean he's sort of Harry Pilling size, but you know, he's not one of these 6'3" monsters. He's only a comparatively little fella, and yet he really zips it through, and I think Walla Lawita was beaten by sheer pace there.
Well, what would back your argument up? Excuse me. 3 of his 4 wickets in this innings, and it'd be lovely if he got a 5 for, have been bowled.
Yes.
And that indicates, you know, that he's beaten players for pace. He's bowled terrifically well. I was saying to you off air before play started that it had been his most convincing performance I've seen from him with the ball, because in the past, although he has got wickets and has a happy knack of doing that, but he also was guilty in the past of straying down leg side and this sort of thing, and giving 4 balls away, and typically he might be giving away 5 runs and over, which has restricted the amount of time that Ryan Tenduscough, the then captain, was prepared to give him in terms of number of overs bowled. But no one's been more economical than he has here. He bowled 5 overs 7 runs in the first innings, and his current figures 4 for 17 in 9.4 overs. I mean, this is terrific going, and it's an indication that he's really coming on. We have to give some credit to Andre Nell, the Essex bowling coach, who's clearly been doing a lot of very good work with him.
Well, yes. Tim Murtagh comes to the crease, number 11, another left-hander, and he's obviously adopted the the let's hit out or get out, and sure enough, the first ball somewhat agricultural. He plays it out is to flatter it. He smashes it out to extra cover.
Yes, I think he'd be terribly offended to hear you say somewhat agricultural. He'd say straight bat, clean hit. What are you grumbling about? And of course he weren't really grumbling, but I know what you mean. He probably quite rightly has thought, well, the best hope of making anything of a game here is that I just merrily hit away and hope we can sort of maybe steal the 30 or 40 runs, maybe even more.
I think I meant it was probably one of those shots that was based solely on the hand-eye coordination rather than technique. but it was effective. He tries to do the same thing again and steps slightly away to leg and carves it through the offside. Because we don't have any scoreboard, I'm just trying to, or scorecards rather, I didn't make a note of how many Wallalawita made.
7.
7, thank you gentlemen. They are in accord there, both shouting out 7. Brackets, why don't you pay attention? End of the over, and Middlesex are 147 for 9, a lead of 49.
Well, it's an excellent scoreboard here, but I do lament the fact that there's no last man up there, because very often in our job, I'm going to excuse you for any apology, because I've made the same mistake 2 or 3 times in this game, that you're busy describing how someone's just got out, and they do put it up on the board, but if you sort of spend about 30 seconds describing the dismissal and updating the score, you suddenly look up and say, oh, I didn't notice how many he got, and then it's too late to notice. So I think there is some margin for error there. 147 for 9 means that the lead is 49 as Harmer comes up from the river end, bowls. Oh, what a lovely delivery, and it was an incredibly slow delivery, but it still turned sharply enough to beat Simpson's forward prod. And it'll be interesting to see if Simpson, who's really been a wonderful sort of rearguard innings from him, now decides to hit out. Well, he's got a run here. It wasn't actually with an attacking shot, but he just nudged the ball down to fine leg, and the score moves along to 148 for 9. And if you hear some rather uncouth clapping from behind us, it's Kevin Hand. Yes, he even thinks he needs to explain to me what the clapping was about. The lead is 50. I've been dreading that single there. But
it was, I agree, somewhat uncouth. It was the actions of a rapper.
Yeah, which we don't like. As Harmer's in, bowls, and they go through for a single here.
The trouble is with these people, they come into Essex and they think they can take liberties, don't they?
They do. They absolutely do. And
about me, the Middlesex batsman.
Certainly the scores goes to 149 for 9. Oh dear, Dick, we're going to have another round of applause if there's another single.
Oh, it'll be uncontrollable.
Does he know there's no longer any bonus points in the second innings for... Anyway, there it is. There's another uncouth, I think even uncouther, to create a new comparative adjective, round of applause there, which will let you know that the score's gone up to 150. We don't really need to commentate at the moment. Simpson has 25. Murtaugh's back on strike. Now, is he going to have a real go at Harmer here? Comes around the wicket. Yes, he is. And he's bowled.
Or is he stumped?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, actually.
It doesn't matter, he's out.
Yeah, he's out. He's either bowled or stumped.
Stumped, I'd say.
And both Kevin and Dick think he's stumped, and I'm prepared to take their word for it, but we will just...
I think that's a working majority.
Check on the board. It certainly is. I'm used to being in a minority ever since I was born. In fact, my father was determined that the family wouldn't have a second child. And my mother said, well, I'm the one who's going to do all the hard work, so we are. She regretted it later, of course. Simpson not out 26. Murtaugh just waiting. Stumped it is officially now, and said with an uncouth air of triumph from Kevin behind me there. But I will say this, I'm delighted for Adam Wheater to get a little bit of credit as well there, because he's performed thoroughly well with both gloves and bat in this match. As I was saying, I'd give him the man of the match award narrowly over Sam Cook, and the stumping just is the clincher. So that's it, 150 all out, and Essex will need 53 to win.
The finality with which you said that, does that mean we're going off air for 7 or 8 minutes?
Not necessarily,
actually. No, right, okay, well, in that case I'll go through what's happened in the, how long is it, in the 54 minutes or so this morning. Middlesex resumed on 123 for 6, a lead of 25, and then the first man to go was James Harris, who was bowled by Sam Cook, beg his pardon, losing his off stump in the process for his overnight score of 3 at 123 for 7. Then when it was 133 for 8, Blake Cullen was caught by Wheater off the bowling of Cook for 4. 10 runs later, 143 for 9, when Tillan Wallalawita was bowled by Beard beaten purely for pace, again losing his off stump somewhat spectacularly, and the last wicket to go, Tim Murtagh, who'd clearly decided that attack was the best form of defence, he was stumped by Wheater off the bowling of Harmer for 5, leaving John Simpson, who'd batted very steadfastly this morning and hardly played a full shot. He was not out 26, but he just didn't get enough support by the tail, and leaving Somerset, beg your pardon, good grief, leaving Middlesex all out for 150, which means that Essex will require 53 to win.
Indeed. 53 to win. Bowling figures, I don't know if you've...
No, I haven't got them here.
Yeah.
I can get
4 for Beard, and I think it's 3 for Cook and 3 for Harmer.
Yes, 4 for 21 for Beard, 3 for 54 for Harmer. I'll see if I can get them up on the interweb.
But that rather suggests perhaps Jamie Porter.
My name is Simon Harmer. I'm from Essex County Cricket Club. We're at the Saffron Kitchen doing some food packing and helping a little bit in the kitchen to provide some hot meals for the NHS workers and people on the front lines during this sort of key time and crisis that the United Kingdom finds itself in.
Kevin Hand, always one of the great men on the circuit. It's been a very enjoyable 3 days, Kevin.
You know, I'm genuinely disappointed that this game's coming rather sharply to a close, because it has been a lovely few days and it's going to be a long old winter, isn't it, until we're back to a bit of first-class cricket again, hopefully next April.
The only thing that could have improved it for me, and I actually mean this even though it sounds insincere, is my old mucker David Townsend hasn't been here to join in.
I was about to say, when you were talking about the oldest cricket commentators in town, I didn't know DT was coming, but...
Well, he of course was Middlesex cricket call when I did Essex cricket call, and neither of us were spring chickens even then, and that was 1988 I think we started.
Here's Murter, he's right arm over the wicket to Walter, 3 slips in the gully, go down as that, nips in over the top of Midland, off and left alone by Walter, a good leave. So 53 to win, and should all be done without any great problem for Essex. As you mentioned, Wheater's innings, you look at the scorecards and it's quite simple. Middlesex 138 and 150, Essex 236. But largely thanks to the 80 odd from Wheater. Take that out of the game now and we could have quite an interesting chase, couldn't we? But Wheater has been standalone in this game really, as Mercer comes in to bowl and this ball squirts off an edge to backward points from Mercer to Walter, and there's no run. Anderson's warming up, having taken 4 for in the first innings, 7 in the last match. It looks as though he's going to open up from the Hayes close end, which well, you in particular, we all were really, weren't we? John Topley as well. Where had Anderson been? Was the question.
Yeah, 50th over before he came on, and he wreaked absolute havoc when he did. He cleaned up the Essex lower order with 4 wickets, not quite in the blink of an eye, but in the blink of 2 eyes.
That's the thing. Balls onto the pads of Walter. It deflects away to square leg, and appeal from behind the stumps, not from Mercer. And there's no run. Well, it was Cullen that picked up Cook in the first innings, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
And well, hoping that Lightning would strike twice, perhaps Middlesex would go with Cullen first up, but yeah, Anderson. Interestingly, Cullen didn't bowl in the second innings against Sussex, when Middlesex bowled Sussex quite cheaply, not as cheap as 53, or 51 as it would have to be, wouldn't it, for a victory for Middlesex. But here is Mercer, he's in, bowls, and onto the pads of Walter. The ball deflects away into the onside. There's no run. They did bowl Sussex for 100 though in that second innings at Radlett. And Cullen didn't bowl in the second innings. It was just Anderson, Mercer and Miguel Cummins, if memory serves, or maybe it was Tom Helm. Let's check back now to see who the third one was. But the point being that they did go to Anderson ahead of Cullen, despite having waited so long to go to Anderson in the innings here. Yeah, the first innings.
Yeah, it did seem very strange. It might have made quite a difference.
Yes, it was Cummins, the other one against Sussex's. Here's Mercer, bowls an angle ball across Walter, left alone, one to come in the opening over. And
I think back particularly, talking of making a difference in the game, Middlesex 138 all out. Now, Essex were, I think it was 70 or 80 odd for 5 when Tender Scouter and Wheater came together. Now, if Anderson had come on then and caused them as much trouble as he did when he eventually did come on, Essex might have had very little, if anything, of a first innings lead.
We'd be home by now, Paul.
Yeah, yes.
So lucky they didn't. Here's Mercer. Bowls, and this ball's onto the pads and tickled down to fine leg for 4, and it's 49 to win for Essex, who are 4 without loss at the end of the opening over. Walter facing all the deliveries, and Cook to have strike against Anderson. It is. Yeah, they shouldn't have brought him on at all. We could have stayed here until tomorrow, Paul.
Yes. Well, some things don't change. That's exactly how Paul Walter got off the mark in the first innings, with a little clip, very fine deflection off the pads down to fine leg to the boundary. On that occasion he followed up with a lovely cover drive for 4 in the same Merter over, after Merter had previously been very much on the spot indeed. But that is the end of the Merter over, so Walter will have to wait for his chance to repeat the cover drive. In the meantime, it's going to be Martin Anderson. spells his name with 2 S's because of a Swedish father, I think was said. I suggested that perhaps his dad was the Anderson from ABBA, but apparently not so. And here is Anderson now, 3 slips. Bowls to Cook. Oh, goodness me, beats him all ends up. And well, Cook, who scored single figures in the first innings, now he averages nearly 50 per innings in his career. And one of the beautiful things about a top class batsman is if they average 50 or thereabouts and they get a duck one day, it means that to conform to their average, they'll probably get 100 next time. Well, he certainly won't do that in this game because Essex only need 53 to win, but he won't want a second low scorer as Anderson bowls to him. And he's off the mark as he plays this past the square leg umpire. They've taken 1 and will be able to saunter back for a second, and that takes a score to 6 for no wicket after 8 deliveries.
Andrew Whitehurst says, thanks for the Red Bull commentary this summer. I can't tell you how much good hearing all your voices has done over this bizarre lockdown summer. Cricket is such a balm for the soul. Yeah, it is. It's a great disappointment. And you're right, you're off to a Lord's final by the looks of it, but quite possibly, and of course there are a few other permutations that could deny Essex that.
Anderson's in bowls. This ball is driven to mid-off. There will be no run. And was that Andrew who emailed in there? Yeah, Andrew, thank you very much for getting in touch with us. And
tweeted, if we're allowed to read the tweets.
And I think you probably would agree, Andrew, in the light of your comments. I was saying only a few minutes ago, I'm so glad, even though it went against the majority wish of the counties, that this 4-day competition has taken place and not just endless white ball cricket with what wouldn't have been that many 50-over games, because this really enables us to get into a proper cricket match lasting over several days, as this one goes down leg side and John Simpson takes. Because I think from a player's point of view, if they played only white ball cricket this year and no red ball cricket at all, you know, the red ball game in 80-odd% at least of all the players is what they rate themselves by, and to go virtually 2 years without any such practice wouldn't have done them any good at all. Here comes Anderson in and bowls to Cook. Appeal for LBW. I think there's a bit of bat in that, and they go for a single. I'm wrong because he's just going to signal a leg by, but in any event, umpire Russell Warren has ruled that it was not out, and the score is 7 for no wicket.
Yeah, I guess pitching outside leg, the excitement was really how low it kept. And it's interesting when Cook there nudges gloves with Walter, how he's dwarfed by Walter in his nose. Yeah. He's a tall man himself, Cook, isn't he? But absolutely dwarfed by him there. That's
right. I've only interviewed Paul Walter once, but I do remember having a certain nervousness about how I was going to stretch the microphone up. He was very good, I have to say, on interview.
He crouched down for you, did he?
Yep. Yes. Got down on his knees. This next ball goes through to wicketkeeper John Simpson, because Walter can leave a delivery outside off stump from Martin Anderson, and his best ball in that over was the very first one that beat Alistair Cook. All ends up. He had to play at it, and it just was slanted across the left-hander. Beautiful delivery. 7 for no wicket, needing 53 to win.
Derek says, good morning, Kevin. Not looking good for Middlesex, but they have my sympathy to finish at the Oval late evening and then have to travel to Chelmsford for an early start. Absurd, says Derek.
And having praised the ECB for getting this competition on, but yeah, some of the actual timetabling and scheduling does leave a lot to be desired.
Mertz's in, he bowls, and Cook's beaten on the back foot. There it goes to Simpson. A yelp from mid-off. Who was that scallywag at mid-off getting excited? Nick Gubbins. Paul Howden says Kent may regret not making a game with us. Yeah, Kent on that final day at Canterbury refused to set a game up with Middlesex. It ended in a tame draw. Although, funnily enough, Kent was something like 80-odd without loss, and they required 180 more to win off 18 overs. And in this day and age, 80-odd without loss, 2 set batsmen, 10 and over for 18 overs, you'd have thought was quite possible. But they agreed to draw at that point, rather bizarrely, as his Mercer bowls and squares up. Cook goes through to Simpson.
Interesting story there. One of our guests at the Essex Cricket Society not so long ago was former Kent coach Paul Farbrace, who deserves enormous credit for England's World Cup win, because it was under Farbrace's sort of interregnum that he completely changed the way, or helped to completely change the way England played 50-over cricket. And he is a very frank man. He says what he thinks. We'll come back to that after this ball.
Mercer's past the umpire. He bowls to Cook, who on the back foot punches back to the bowler, and there's no run.
And Paul Farbrace said quite openly, he said, me and Rob Key didn't really get on, and he was at pains to emphasise that it was nobody's fault. He wasn't blaming Rob Key, simply that they came from a different angle on games. Key was well known for being a rather defensive captain, and Farbrace was a man who, in the instance you've just quoted, would have said, right, come on, let's have a game of cricket here.
Yeah, Matt Walker was the coach, and nothing of interest for Kent on that final morning, which was a real shame. Murtagh bowls to Cook, and this ball's clipped away through square leg by the former England captain, and he'll pick up a couple here, and they'll think about a third, and no is the cry in the end, so Cook has to get back. 9 without loss. Cook's on to 4, level with Walter. It was there was a lot of criticism level at Middlesex that afternoon for not declaring earlier, included by myself before tea. What was becoming apparent was only 1 wicket fell across the final 2 innings of that match, which really flattened out. And as I say, Kent, the real surprise actually was that 180 to win with 18 overs left, Kent didn't go for it. Well, why not? Why on earth did they not? Having been 80 odd without loss as they were at the time, just go for it and have a dart. They can always shut up shop. As Murtagh comes in and Cook leaves alone, angling across him through to Simpson it goes.
And it is true. I know, I actually know a couple of Kent supporters in the Robert Key era when he was captain, who were just itching to say. I mean, he's a wonderful player, and they thoroughly like the man. He's an excellent man, but I do wish he'd sort of be a bit more adventurous. And certainly, there is nothing to be gained by being defensively minded in the way that the county championship is rightly set up.
Well, remember Middlesex again on that third afternoon at Lord's.
I didn't like to mention it, but 2017. Yes.
Murtagh's in bowls, and this ball's pushed away wide of mid-on for a single for Cook, and he moves to 5. Essex at 10 without loss. Cook will keep the strike and face Anderson. And then Middlesex had to wait half a season for a win and were ended up relegated, and Essex, having escaped really those first 2 games,
they did
draws, then went undefeated, didn't they, to win the title?
They yes, that's right. Actually, they won 10 of 14 games in the end, and should have been beaten, arguably in all 3 first games. In the first one against Lancashire, it was Dan Lawrence's incredible vigil for a young man who's still a teenager, 141 not out, that thwarted Lancs of certain victory. Somerset should really have beaten Essex at Taunton, but managed to throw it away because Neil Wagner dropped them in short, and the Somerset batsman kept lobbing them up in the air to the onside, and then. The game against Middlesex should have beaten Essex hands down, as Anderson's in, bowls to Cook and beats him again. Very good bowling from Anderson. He's troubled all the batsmen he's bowled to in this game.
I had a tweet as well from John Foot. He says, well, this won't last long, but I think lots of positives from this short season. Robbie White, Max Holden, Blake Cullen, Martin Anderson, Nick Gubbins. Eskenazi's former serious problem, though, he questions. Still need a top spinner to challenge, I think. Well, the great thing for Middlesex is they've now got 3 spinners. One of them really you'd hope will emerge and make the place their own. Souter, Wallalawita and Holman.
And Anderson's in bowlers, and Cook has pulled the ball down leg side away for 4 runs, and that takes the score along to 14 for no wicket, and Cook moves up to 9, and Walter has 4.
I know Stuart Law's very fond of Nathan Souter, the wrist spinner, batsman, bowler, and in the field as well. Likes having him in his side. But Wallalawita's obviously managed to push through into the first-class game this year, maybe because of the reduction in games this summer.
Anderson bowls, Cook plays it into the onside. He thought about a single, it wasn't there, retrieved from mid-wicket region. There's no run, and I'd just like to endorse that last tweet because, I forget who was...
It was John,
thank you very much for your contribution, because it just amplifies what I was saying earlier, that the fact that the minority view held up and we've had red ball cricket, you've given about 5 examples there of players you think have benefited thoroughly from this competition. Cook plays the ball out into the covers, there's no run, and no one can tell me that if we played 50 over cricket instead, that you'd be able to say, well, 5 of our players have really benefited, because if it was just a one-day innings, it has no bearing on how they might do do in the future championships.
No, and I think there were only a few of the smaller counties who were looking for that because they were worried about the staging costs of 4-day cricket.
Yeah, I mean Essex voted for the 50 over stuff.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Over the championship?
The majority did, yeah.
Really?
As here's the next one, and this is played to square leg and there's no run.
I mean the players would have wanted this as well.
Well, they would, and fair play. I mean, I do accept the reasons for it, that yes, of course, it does cost more money in a year when money's never been tighter, and of course, there was the thought that, as we've seen from the unfortunate abandonment of the Gloucester Northants game, that might have occurred a lot earlier and in more places. So, bearing in mind we're now talking about 3,000 new cases every day all of a sudden, it is, we really have been very fortunate getting all the cricket in we have, as Anderson's in, Bolster Cook plays it down to mid-off, there's no run, and you do just have to mention that, you know, with a week or two to go before that Lord's final, you just have to hope nothing happens to sort of prevent that one being played. 14 for no wicket at the end of that over.
Yeah, that's quite true actually. You know, again, I think tweeted about it back in February or March. I really didn't see a ball being bowled this summer because of what happened.
I agree.
I thought if that had have happened in the first round or the second round, then goodness me, the season would have been in disarray. Fortunately, it happened in the final round in a game that had nothing riding on it.
But what it does tend to prove, however, is that when mankind is adventurous, more often than not, that sense of adventure pays off and reaps a good dividend. And the sort of naysayers, and you know, maybe we were two of them, but the naysayers in the end are left sort of saying, well, actually, it's turned out rather well.
It has. Here's Mercer bowls to Walter, who cuts into the ground. It's fielded at mid-off, and there is no run. Yeah, absolutely, and it is with a really heavy heart that I'm going to wave goodbye to first-class cricket today for the year.
Yeah,
and see it again next April. It's a real shame, you know, especially someone like Tim Mercer there.
Yeah, heavy heart, yes, but at least we've had something of a season, and for that, we're very, very grateful indeed.
Short run up from Mercer to Walter. He's right arm over bowls, and Walter bumps the ball back to him. There's no run. Oh, absolutely. It's been fabulous to see, and I think that, I mean, I'm sure I'll interview Stuart Law at the close today, and the question will be, well, what have you got from this summer? And I think individually, there have been a good number of players as listed there, where Middlesex have got a lot, but they've also got a question or two still to answer really about how they put those individual performances at times together, and there wasn't really an individual performance in this match with the bat, was there, for Middlesex, as Mercer is in, bowls, and this ball's driven away off an inside edge to James Harris, who stands at mid-wicket.
And of course the number one thing we must all hope for is an effective vaccine to be rolled out before next season, because judging by the way the figures of new infections are jumping at the moment, you know, it's the problem isn't going to go away unless the vaccine is found. Yeah,
but then we hope by next Easter that perhaps the flu season's gone through and we've all stopped sneezing and coughing, and we can get on with a full season again, as Mercer bowls full outside the off stump, and it's left alone by Walter through to the keeper, and there's no run. I'm hopeful that next year, having seen what they've managed this year, I have to say I'm hopeful next year we'll have a proper season.
Well, so am I, but with the reservation that I could see some very dark months coming across the winter when the infection, at the moment the cases are not particularly severe that are coming up, but in the colder weather they could become so, and, I mean, there's a lot of ground to be covered yet.
The bigger concern for all the counties and for county cricket fans indeed, as here's Mercer bowls to Walter and a solid forward defence into the onside and there's no run, is the financial ramifications.
Yes, indeed.
I think, you know, if we've lost half a season this year, if we were to lose half a season again next year, well, you say, all right, well, you know, we'll get half a season, that's something, but the financial difficulties of it, because there'll be a lot of players coming to the end of their contracts at the end of this season, and I think when the counties realise not only the money that they've lost this year, but the money that they will lose next year in revenue, through sponsorship, commercial.
Take the football, it starts again on Saturday, but I can't believe they'll get through without several cancellations.
Mercer's in, bowls, this ball's turned to mid-wicket, and there's no run, 14 without loss. I mean, they're not going to get the kind of revenue streams, and I'm talking about all the way through, commercial, sponsorship, obviously membership and gates, next summer that they got last year. It's going to be considerably less. Obviously this year was a pause button and it was virtually nothing, but you know, there was sponsorship and branding deals in place, I guess, but but next year I think that's going to be a real concern, Paul. And I do think at the end of this season there's going to be a lot of players. Now maybe they'll have to take smaller contracts at other counties. They let go from their, let's say X's let go from Essex and Middlesex, sign them up on a third of the contract.
Anderson's in, bowls to Cook, and Cook pulls the ball away majestically to the backward square leg boundary, and bowled to him anywhere in that direction, and Cook will say thank you very much indeed, and that takes the score along to 18 for no wicket, and Cook goes to 13. The target is 53.
Hello to Mark in Madrid, who says, morning Kev, a late T20 finish followed by championship the next morning is always a recipe for chaos. I enjoyed the Bob Willis Trophy. It is good for Division 2 sides to know what they have to do to compete, and the season has been fairly positive for Middlesex.
Yeah, very good point you make.
In a way, this is their own final, Middlesex. They got to this game, beat Essex, and there's a chance they might make the Lord's final. But they've got to this game, and I think it's shown them just how far they still have to come. And the relentless nature of the Essex trio of seam bowlers, complemented by Harmer, was too much for them.
Anderson is in, bowls to Cook, and Cook whips this ball off the pads to the square leg boundary, and another 4 to him takes his tally up to 17, the score to 22 for no wicket, 53 needed to win. And going back to Jeff Leonard's point that he made earlier about how Gloucestershire, the 4-day tournament had enabled Gloucestershire to realise what was needed to play in Division 1, and the point he made was in Division 2 you might come across 2 good bowlers in an attack. In Division 1 you're quite likely to come across 4, and Essex certainly have that as Cook hits the ball firmly out to mid-off and there's no run, and that's without any input from the likes of Peter Siddle who might return. So good point made. We've got really a little bit of sunshine. It's a bit reluctant, but it's a lot better than it looked in a very dull start to the game today. Middlesex were eventually all out for 150, as here is Anderson in and bowls to Alistair Cook, who drives but without any real timing, and there's no run there. And James Harris was fairly immediately bowled by Cook for 3, and that was without any addition to the score at the time, 123 for 7. Blake Cullen caught by Wheater down leg side off Cook for 4, that was 133 for 8. Then Aaron Beard came into the attack and bowled Walla-Wheater for 7, and that was the third of hitting the stumps by Beard in his 4 wickets that he took. And last man was Tim Murter, stump Wheater, bowled Harmer 5. Here's the next ball from Anderson, played back to the bowler, and the bowling figures: Beard very impressive, 4 for 21 in 10.3 overs, Harmer 3 for 54, Cook 3 for 28, Porter didn't take a wicket. I think that Harmer finished with an astonishing 32 wickets in the only 4 games where Essex bowled in this competition. The match at Arundel only had 1 innings in it, and Essex were batting, as Anderson comes in to bowl to Cook, still with 3 slips. Cook drives, but back to the bowler, and another over ends. The target therefore for Essex, with Middlesex having been 150 all out, trailing by 98 on first innings. Essex needing 53 to win, have moved without too many problems, 22 without loss.
The Grumbler says, great to hear Dick Davis and Paul Newton commentating in tandem on BBC Essex Sports. Basically, it's an episode of Last of the Summer Wine with a bit of cricket going on in the background. Never ever change. And there's a lovely gif of Compo and Cleggy. I think are the 2, isn't it?
Yes.
I won't say which is which, but I think it's quite clear.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Grumbler. And just not because you happen to have said kind words, but I will just point out that you've got a book published. I think Last Wicket Stand. I bought it myself. I haven't had time to read it yet, but most certainly will do during the winter. And it takes a lot to get a book published, so very well done.
Do you know, small world as well. Richard won't remember this. So here comes Mercer, well I'm sure he won't. Anyway, here's Mercer, right arm over the wicket, bowls to Walter, and through to the keeper it goes, beating the edge of the bat, pushing forward on that one. It's through to Simpson. My very first job as a journalist was covering the Arsenal press conferences.
Yes, this is Richard Clark, whose real name Grumbler is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was only yesterday that I found out that it was Richard Clark, and looked at him. Oh, I remember him. He won't remember me because I was only 20 odd years ago now.
He's got a good memory for nightmares, you know. And yeah, I realised that of course he used to cover Arsenal at that time as well. As here comes
Mercer bowls a short ball, and it's hooked by Walter into the ground, and I dare say it took a little bit of the pad as well, because the pace went right off it, off the bottom edge, and it trickles away wide of Simpson for a single, and Walter moves to 5. Cook 17, Essex 23 without loss, 30 to win. Yes, but it was only yesterday I realised who the grumbler was, and he's got a column in the cricket paper as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, and well, you'd have to think from this position with about 35 minutes to go to the lunch break that Essex probably will win the game sort of just before lunch.
Here's Mercer in, bowls, and this beats the edge of Cook's bat as it goes through to the keeper, and there's no run.
And if ever I lined something up for someone to take a hat-trick, having just said it should finish just before lunch, and that was quite close actually to taking Cook's edge. It was a very good delivery from Tim Mercer, and we rightly enjoy the emergence of youngsters through all the counties, and several have emerged in the light of this competition, but also we must very much enjoy people like Tim Mercer, Alistair Cook, Darren Stevens and others as well, who are still playing the game when they might have been expected to retire.
Mercer bowls, pushed up to mid-on by Cook, and there's no run.
Cook has announced his intention of still being around next year, and the way he batted at Arundel when he made 129 not out suggests that why shouldn't he? He was in absolutely majestic form, and he's still only 35, and I still insist he's thoroughly enjoying playing, and he was on a 3-year contract. Next year would be the last of 3. I don't see any reason, if he's still enjoying it after next year, why he wouldn't continue still further.
Mercer bowls, and Cook defends inside edge of the bat to mid-wicket. Derek in Hurstpier Point says, we are indeed lucky to have some cricket this season, but it has broken my record of attending matches at Lord's every season since 1947. 51 to 54 accepted when he was on national service duty at that point, Derek.
Wars and pandemics.
Yes.
The only very well done to you. You know, it's a great record, and disappointed for you that you couldn't get to the cricket this year.
Mercer bowls, and forward goes Cook, turning into the onside. There's no run. Mark from Madrid says, we've had cricket, and some very good cricket. It has been a privilege, although occasionally painful, writes the Gloucestershire fan, I should add, to watch Somerset destroy all comers. Yeah, I'll have a look and see what the scores are elsewhere. Emma Vernon, completely agree with Kevin Hand that it will be sad to see the end of 4-day cricket today for Middlesex for the season, but incredibly grateful for having had the chance to listen and watch via the stream this year, when at some stage all looked lost. Here's to 2021. Hear, hear.
Very much so. Thank you for that, Emma. As we're going to see Blake Cullen replace Martin Anderson in the attack. We'll bring Dick Davis back to the mic at the end of this over.
Andrew Wilmot says, I'm beginning to think we may never get to see that Tim Mercer century. No, don't say that, Andrew. It will be... I mean, he's got such ability with the bat that it really will be nonsense for him not to get a century before the end of his career. But now that he's down at 11, of course, it really limits his chances.
So, here comes Blake Cullen. Has made a very good impression in this game with his bowling. Comes in to bowl, and that's edged through to the third man boundary. It's a very good delivery for your first delivery of the morning, and it was a false shot, but it brings 4 runs and takes Essex ever closer to their what seems like a meagre total of 53. Essex more than halfway to it now, 27 for no wicket. Walter has 9.
Stephen Stratford says, just grateful that the ECB managed to get some county cricket played and some T20 games done. Also, all those people in the counties, including the ground staff who have worked to get these games played. Finally, the excellent live feed and commentary, all done in the most difficult pandemic circumstances. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, beautifully described, Stephen. Thank you very much indeed. As here is Cullen in from the Hayes close end, bowls to Walter, tucks it off the pads, but easily fielded at square leg, no run.
Well, let's try and wrap through a few of these, because this game is not long for the world, is it? 26 to win, 27 without loss, Essex. Thank you all for getting in contact. 4 long years, says Chris Hankin. When is this going to be sorted? Well, again, this game is the real... You know, Middlesex came into this southern group as the lowest ranked team in terms of the county tables the last few years. But the fact that they've come to Essex with a chance still of making the final,
Cullen bowls. Walter plays the ball for no run to mid-on.
which I think must, certainly even themselves annoy them at the moment that they haven't put up a better fight of it here. I know Derbyshire are fighting back, aren't they? And Yorkshire likewise. At one stage it did look as though those two might really open a door for Middlesex. Derbyshire 169 for 8 now, trailing Lancashire by 50 runs. So still 71 runs for that batting point, which Derbyshire desperately need.
31 runs, I think.
31, thank you.
Yeah.
Yorkshire are 108 for 4, replying to Leicester's 124.
And here's a nice cover drive by Paul Walter. Timed it well, 4 runs through extra cover. And that takes the score to 31 for no wicket and takes Walter up to 13. Cook has 17. Dick Davis about to rejoin us at the end of this over.
Somerset 57 for 4, leading Worcestershire by 108 with 6 wickets standing. Could still be game on there.
Yes, wouldn't it be strange if Somerset slipped up there?
What about a Worcestershire-Derbyshire final to Bob Willis Trophy at Lords?
Yes, indeed. Essex will play Somerset in a beer match at something like the Membry service station as this ball is played away and it's going down towards the third man boundary. That was more intentional than the one earlier in that direction in the over from Walter, who's that's I think his third boundary of the over, and he joins Cook on 17. It's 35 for no wicket, and now just a further 18 runs are needed. And I was saying only 2 minutes ago it looked as if it would be over before lunch, and now I think we can say here that short of something quite sensational happening, it's almost bound to be.
Yeah, and I think they extend lunch, don't they, with the end in sight?
Yeah.
On day 3, so we'd be here till 1 o'clock to finish this if it was required, I think.
Stretched sandwiches and the extended lunch as Cullen's in to complete the over, bowls to Walter, and discomfort's in there, takes him on the 5-pad. End of the over. It's my very great pleasure, first of all, to say thank you to you all for listening again, and we hope to be here next year, and also a great pleasure to allow Dick Davis to come in and execute from the commentary point of view the final word.
Cheers, Paul, and I hope for you that Essex do make the final. I think I have to say an Essex-Somerset final this year would be superb if it were to work out that way. It would be a fine 5-day feast at Lords. You'd hope really that the weather first of all played its part, and if the weather does play its part, that it would go at least a full 4 days, maybe into the 5th. But a couple of decent spinners will be on display if that is the final. So probably a great turning track, Lords, is it? So maybe it would be over to the seamers, of which both have fine ranks as well. Here's Mercer, he's right arm over, he bowls to Cook, who chops down on this one and pushes up to mid-off where Gubbins field. There's no run. Essex 35 without loss, 18 to win. Welcome back, Dick Davis.
Thanks, Kevin. Yes, I think assuming Essex win this one, and cautious man as I am, I'm prepared to say that they're in the better position. Then a lot depends on how Derbyshire get on.
8 down, 174 for 8, 45 runs behind, 26 runs for a batting point. Hussain still there on 80. Mercer's in, bowls and edged along the floor in between third and fourth slip, and 4 for Cook, and it's 14 to win for Essex. They're 39 for 1. Cook's on to 21.
Yeah, not a totally assured shot, but it was along the ground all the time, so safe enough. Walton 17, Cook 21, just 14 required now. They don't even put the required rate on the board, so far they're going at 4.7.
Colchester Views on Twitter says, Kevin, please could you thank Dick and Paul for their excellent commentary and ramblings.
Ramblings.
Mercer bowls, forward goes Cook, pushing back up the track, there's no run. It'll be great to get a message to them using your Twitter account. I know they normally only accept carrier pigeon, but he left 2 days ago and clearly hasn't made it yet. Thank you, Colchester Views on Twitter.
Yes, when I get back to the studio I'll look in the pigeon loft and pick up any messages.
Mercer off a short run up to Cook. He's in, bowls, and Cook solidly defends into the offside. It's fielded at mid-on and there's no run. I'm sensing a last over from Mercer here. He has none for 12 from 4.4, and surely just a worthwhile saying to Tilan Wallalouis to go and turn your arm over for a couple of overs before this game, and indeed this season's done. This season may well be done for Mercer at the moment as well, but I would say that Middlesex's third seamer problem that they have in T20 at the moment could well be solved by this man who bowled so well over the years for Middlesex in T20, Tim Mercer. He's coming off an S-shaped run-up now, having a little bit of fun before the season's over, and he bowls quite a quick delivery, I must say. Actually bent his back with that one, through to the gloves of Simpson it goes, left alone by Cook.
I noticed he was 39 only a couple of weeks ago. Is there any talk that this will be his last
No,
season?
I asked him during that match, how are you feeling? And he said, I feel 29. So
Excellent.
good news. And again, you look at the length of the run-up he comes in at. You know, you think of Darren Stevens, Andre Adams I go to as well. Adams was coming in off barely 4 or 5 paces in the end, wasn't he? But still bowling beautifully.
Right, yes.
Mercer, I'd imagine, would be able to do the same, to be honest.
Yes.
He's snaking his run again from behind the umpire this occasion. Bowls, and Cook leaves alone. That just misses the top of the off stump. Through it goes to Simpson. End of Mercer's 5th over, quite possibly the end of his season. None for 12 from 5. Essex 39 without loss, 14 to win. Cullen 1 over bowled, none for 12. Cook 21, and Walter will have strike on 17.
Yes, it's not just the length of the run, but the routes that he was taking during that over. Now, I think Tim Mercer is one of those players that on the county circuit, there are certain players, irrespective of what county you support, there are certain players that command respect and almost affection sort of universally, amongst British cricket watchers, and I think Tim Mercer falls firmly into that category as Cullen moves in and bowls. Oh, and that's edged, but along the ground, fielded at first slip competently enough by Stephen Eskenazi.
Yeah, he and Anderson have been a real bonus this year for Middlesex, seeing how what they've got to show. Derek Payne says cricket's recession is ahead of us. A real concern is whether members will renew, knowing that they may not watch much cricket next season. Middlesex have the highest percentage of income from membership of all the counties, writes Derek.
Cullen to Walter. Walter plays that defensively, not entirely confidently.
Who is a fine and measured tweeter over the years, so I trust his percentages there on that one. A Middlesex member, Derek. Or certainly was. I think he still is. But so the difficult times ahead was what Paul and I were saying for county cricket next year, even if there is a full season to be played, because finding money in this world at the moment is not going to be easy going forward.
No, it's not. As Cullen moves in, bowls. And that's just pushed out from the offside. Well, of course, a large percentage of people that go and watch, particularly the 4-day version, are retired, aren't they? So probably has less of an effect on them.
Yes, I guess so. And it's if spectators are allowed in. But you'd imagine by next season, with football fans slowly returning now, there was a pilot at Surrey the other day, wasn't there, for fans to return?
Yes, and
that by next April, you'd have thought there should be a percentage of the ground allowed.
Yes, I think also I was watching a game of rugby over the weekend. I think it was at Quins. I think they had some spectators in as well.
I mean, here at Chelmsford, what's capacity? 5,000?
About that, yes.
Having 1,000 in, or 1,500, or it wouldn't be the usual number that they'd have in, but still better than nothing.
Yes.
And likewise at Lords, 28,000. They'll certainly get a couple of thousand in, you'd have thought, next year, if the pilots go well this winter.
Cullen moves in and bowls, and that's worked away on the onside.
But in general, though, sponsorship and marketing, commercial revenues, they will be a concern for all counties going forward now, because trying to get money out of anybody really nowadays will be particularly tight.
Yes, of course it will.
The effects of this are felt.
Many counties won't be able to afford overseas players, and I don't know if I'm going to get burnt at the stake for saying this, but I don't think that would be a bad thing. I don't mean for the counties.
Well, no, and Colpack, of course, is coming to an end as well, isn't it?
Yes. As Cullen moves in again, buys a crew, but or just a buy in the singular, but it was a bit of a hoik across the line by Walter. I think it came back at him and didn't play it entirely confidently, but it not only got the better of him, got the better of the keeper as well, and they went through for one bye, which means that Walter will retain the strike, with Essex needing another 13 to win. And that was bearing in mind that last run was only a bye. It was a maiden over from Cullen, 0 for 12 in 2 overs.
The Void on Twitter says, thanks to you and all your colleagues for first-class commentaries on first-class cricket. First-class season of proper cricket. Maybe next year, Middlesex, says the Void. Well, maybe next year And Derek, I'll tell you in a moment, here's Mercer bowls, forward goes Walter, pushing into the offside, and there's no run. This will go over your head, Dick. Derek in Hurstpierpoint, our octogenarian listener, says, thanks for making me aware of cauliflower rice.
Right.
Which was the topic of discussion yesterday at one point. That was my lunch yesterday, cauliflower rice from a farm shop around the corner there, in a road I'd never discovered before in Chelmsford, despite all of these years coming to the county ground here. You go out of the ground and turn left and straight across, whereas we always usually go out the back entrance here at Essex and straight into town to grab a bite at lunch, don't we? Here's Mercer. Bowls, and this ball's clipped away through mid-wicket for a single by Walter. He moves to 18-41 without loss, but yeah, that back entrance is shut for this game, so we had to go another way, and I've had a lovely little road just across from the ground.
Chelmsford's full of roads, you know.
I said a lovely road.
You also referred to it as a town. It's a city.
My apologies. I even say that of London, though. You're going into town.
Yes, you do. Yes, it's all right. Yeah.
Got in trouble with my aunt saying that about Dublin as well. Into town, it's a city. Here's Mercer. He bowls him. That's the end of Alistair Cook. Off stump, rocks back. Mercer's 6th over, 1 for 13. Midway through his 6th. Essex are 41 for 1 with just 12 to win. And Mercer has bowled Alistair Cook.
For 21. Cook bowled Mercer. With no scorecards, we have to write all this out in freehand, which is no great drudgery. Cook bowled Mercer for 21, 41 for 1, and during which he scored 4 fours, and took him 39 minutes. So it should be Tom Wesley coming to the crease now. Yes, it is indeed.
Adrian Thomas had sent us the permutations, which we should just remind ourselves of one more time. What time did he send this at? About 30 minutes ago. Of course, there is every chance that things have shifted since then, but I think this still fits. The Bob Willis predictions: Essex 90 points, Somerset 97 points maximum, 89 points if they draw. Worcestershire have to win, maximum points 90. Derbyshire must win with 1 batting point, equals 91 points to overtake Essex if Somerset win. Everyone else out unless Yorkshire less than 400 and win. So basically it's all eyes on Derbyshire. If Somerset win and Derbyshire gain a batting point and win, then they'll go to 91 points and Essex would be out. Yes. So a Somerset win and a Derbyshire win with a batting point eliminates Essex. But at the moment, Essex will be through to the final to be knocked out by either Derbyshire or Somerset or both.
Right. Thank you. I almost thought I was sitting next to Nick Gledhill then.
Yeah. Until you realised that wasn't clear at all, so it couldn't have been Nick. 5 slips go down as Mercer's in and bowls, and that's edged along the floor to 3rd slip by Westley, 41 for 1.
That is no criticism, I hasten to add, and he may well be listening in his pad in northwest Essex, and but he's absolutely brilliant at all these permutations. But then Kevin is obviously as well. I'm certainly not. I have a whole range of limitations, and that's one of them.
Here comes Mercer again. He's past the umpire. Bowls, and this ball's just full of length and clipped away through mid-wicket by Westley. That'll be 4 to get him off the mark as his second ball. 45 for 1 and 12 to win for Essex. 8 to win, sorry, it's gone down from 12 to 8, my apologies. Headmaster at the back of the box.
God, he can't resist it, can he? He can't resist it. So the sun just beginning to come out now that the match is, in its final embers. That doesn't sound quite right, in its final embers, but yes, he did, Embry.
He was here yesterday, wasn't he? Here's Mercer. Yeah. Bowls, and Westley inside edge onto the pad, rolls away into the onside. No run.
He was presumably known as Embers, was he?
Yes.
Embry.
Yeah, still is.
Great friend of Graham Gooch, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was here as a guest of Graham Gooch yesterday.
Oh, right.
Because no away committee or board are allowed into the ground. Small number that are allowed. The Legends Corner, it was dubbed over there by Hugh Turbo of the Cricketer magazine, who's a big Essex fan.
As well. Yes.
I took a picture of them all down there. Keith Fletcher, I was behind him coming in this morning. He's there as well yesterday.
So 8 to win. Walter not out 18, Wesley not out 4, 45 for 1. As it's Cullen to continue bowling from the Hayes close end. Tall, fair head, moves in now, right arm over the wicket, bowls, and Walter goes forward solidly, pushes out on the offside. No addition to that score.
Let's have a look at those scores elsewhere now. We've mentioned all of that. Derbyshire are still 8 down, 177 for 8, trailing Lancashire by 42 runs. So they are digging in. Hussain still there then. He's on 83. Connors with him on 4. And 23 runs for a batting point.
As Cullen moves in, bowls. And worked away fine down to the... Oh no, I nearly said... Well, it was towards the boundary. I never actually said it crossed it. And it didn't indeed. Because Tilan Walalawita came across, made a lot of ground to his left to prevent it going over the boundary rope. So just 1 run accrues. 46 for 1.
Yorkshire 127 for 5 in reply to Leicester's 124. Heavily rain effective match there. And Somerset are 78 for 5, leading Worcestershire by 127. Craig Overton joining Lammonby, who's 43 not out.
Cullen again to Wesley. Oh, Wesley pushes forward somewhat tentatively, which is unsurprising. His confidence can't be too high. He's had a lean season and just went by the outside edge through the wicketkeeper, who has 3 slips keeping him company. And there's a backward point, cover, mid-off, mid-on, mid-wicket, and probably a long leg down by the scoreboard. As Cullen moves in again, bowls to the Essex skipper Tom Wesley, who plays that more solidly, and it trickles out on the offside. Picked up in the covers by Nick Gubbins.
And Hampshire 159 for 9, leading Kent by 180. In a game where, as one of our tweeters pointed out, Kent must surely be regretting not meeting Middlesex on setting up a game on that final day at Canterbury, because they would have a mighty fine carrot dangling in front of them in that chase now had they have set up a game with Middlesex and won it.
Yeah, wouldn't they just? That's just pushed out on the offside to mid-off. No addition to the score. Still another 7 required to win.
And just in general, as we've been discussing and certainly discussed at length at the time, it makes not only for better cricket, but in doing so it makes for better players as well to perform under pressure rather than playing out what turned out to be a dull final day.
Yes. Cullen again to Wesley. Oh, well, no, he withdrew his bat to give him his due. I think he has a genuine leave, withdraws his bat, and it goes through the wicketkeeper.
So what do you reckon, Dick? 5 days at Lords, the Bob Willis Trophy final.
It would be nice.
It's a lovely day in the sun. That'll be, well, it might not necessarily be in the sun, but
of course it will. NW8
late September. Yeah. Well, I will be tuned in and look forward. I do hope you boys get there. Because again, I do think a wonderful finale to the season will be Somerset versus Essex.
Yes.
That of all the permutations at the moment, I think that would be a fitting 5-day final this year, and like I say, hopefully a relatively flat track because both have very good bowling attacks, including the spinners.
Yes.
But the trio that have been on display here, the seamers down at Somerset as well, obviously, are pretty good. So you know, to see a good 5-day game, if the weather permits, would be fantastic. So we'll hope for a good track at Lords, which I'm sure Carl McDermott, the new head groundsman, will be able to put together. I mean, you won't want to put together too good a track though, because if the weather is bad last week of September, then 5 days might not be enough.
No, quite.
Sam Robson is going to bowl from the river end with his cap on. His leg spin blew the game wide open against Surrey in the opening round of the Bob Willis Trophy. And Middlesex romped through to what was looking ever increasingly likely to be a draw that game, but romped through to not an unlikely win, but Surrey looked as though they'd settled things down until Robson entered. Can't quite imagine that it'll have the same impact today, as he's in now with his leg spin bowls, and Walter turns off the back foot down to deep backward square leg for a single. Essex 47 for 1, and Walter is on to 20, so Tilan Walalawita doesn't get the go from his skipper. Just going to have a look at his match figures, if you'll indulge me for a moment. Walla Luisa in the first innings, none for 30 from 18, so a good economy, and not bowled in this innings. Bowled very well in the Sussex game at Radlett. He wasn't quite able to replicate the threat that he carried there. Here at Chelmsford, here's Robson bowling to Wesley, who crashes one away through the covers. Just a single though, the sweeper's out there, and it's 48 for 1. It's 5 to win here at Chelmsford.
He missed it.
He didn't. Has it gone?
He did.
Oh, well, in which case then, Paul, do you want to pop on? I was going to make way, and Paul can pop on with Dick for the end of the match. You sure?
Yeah.
I was going to leave you boys to natter through the winning. Well, no, come on. For Middlesex, the game's done. We've discussed their season and all the bits. So you jump on with Dick ahead of what could be a 5-day final, because this could be the end for Essex if results go against them in the other group. So come on, Paul, you come and have a natter with Dick. Dick, you take over the commentary from Robson.
Okay, then Robson in and bowls, and it's played studiously and defensively by Wesley.
And I'll say thank you to you both before I depart,
Thank
and
you.
speak to the Middlesex listeners at the weekend for the T20.
Thanks, Kevin, very, very much. Always a pleasure. And it's Robson bowling with a cap on. I remember Jeff Boycott bowling with a cap on at in a test match in New Zealand. As Robson moves in now, two to win. Bowls to the Essex captain. It would be somewhat appropriate if the Essex captain scored the winning runs. Not that he's had a good season, far from it. In fact, that's the reason why it'd be quite nice for him to just a handsome cover drive for 4 to win the game would be quite pleasant. As Robson moves in now, just off of 2 or 3 paces, bowls, and Wesley goes forward solidly. Played back to the bowler. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deliveries gone, 1 to go. Assuming it's valid, no reason to think it won't be. Wearing number 12, Sam Robson. Just about to move in now. Moves in and bowls to Wesley, and Wesley does play that out into the covers. This time it is fielded. He takes a single. It's the last ball of the over, so the Essex captain will retain the strike. Essex can't lose this game now. The scores are level. And Essex needing 53 to win, or 52 for 1, with a day and 2 sessions to win. I'd have a couple of bob on Essex to win this, you know.
Well, I was going to say, what I admire about you there was that although you are on the cautious side, if I may say so, and as you said of yourself, but as soon as the all possibility of losing the game was removed, you were the very first to point it out. Go on, you keep going, because you haven't had as much of
dearie me, who is this bowling?
Gubbins.
Thank you. Gubbins moves in, bowls. Oh, and almost gets a wicket with his first delivery.
Good leg spin.
Bowling to the Essex captain.
I'll tell you what, Dick, you were saying that poor old Tom Wesley hadn't had the happiest of seasons, and if he'd been bowled out then, with the scores level, it would have just got worse.
Yes, quite. So a leg spin, another leg spin, I think Kevin indicates leg spinning to me.
Shot put, look.
And yes, it's a very sort of shot put action. He holds the ball by his right ear just before he bowls it. Also wearing a cap, which is out de rigueur amongst the slower bowlers,
yes.
Slower bowlers from Middlesex, obviously.
Splendid pastiche from Middlesex.
Yes. Gubbins moves in now and bowls. And again, it's played defensively. Yes, this is character, almost unique. This carrying the ball like a lead shot by his right shoulder.
Like a scene from Monty Python.
Yes. Moves in now and bowls. An economic approach, i.e. there isn't one really. Just sort of maybe a pace and a half and stands there and twirls his arm over. Moves in now. Bowls. And that's pushed out through mid-on. They go through for a single. There's no point in coming back for the second. And Essex win this game by 9 wickets, with Wesley not out. Did he move into double figures, or did
9? I think he's got.
He's got 9. That included that one. So Wesley not out 9, Walter not out 20. Essex win comprehensively by 9 wickets. And well, I mean, I haven't been here apart from this morning, so I can't really comment from personal experience, but just everything I've read about it and heard. Obviously Essex deserved this win and were much the better side, and now they've got an anxious afternoon waiting to see whether they're going to be at Lord's at the end of the month or not.
Yeah, well played to Essex. That's their 11th consecutive red ball home win. As I explained earlier, it started with the last match of 2018, went right the way through 2019 with 7 straight wins, and they've won all 3 home games here. In the end, I mean, it was a tight game, really. There was a point at which it was by no means certain Essex would get a first innings lead. Adam Wheater, with a very good 83 not out, made sure that in the end it was quite a good first innings lead of 98. Must just put in a word for Paul Walter, because having come in when Ryan Tenduscarter was injured after the first game, he came in and was never dismissed, I think, for less than 30 in the tournament. There were a couple of 20-odd not outs. He was 20 not out here. A couple of 43s that he's got. So never got a big score, but earned his chance up opening the batting, and made a very good job of it indeed, with an 83-run partnership with Cook and Arundel, and 2 good innings here, 43, 20 not out. So that's been very good from an Essex point of view. He'd always been a bit...